In this video, I'm going to show you, yes, you, right there, sitting behind the screen, if dual PC is the right setup for you. I'm also going to walk you through some common dual PC misconceptions and just streaming misconceptions in general. We're going to talk about different dual PC configurations and how I personally have my dual PCs set up. Because in all honesty, I think mine is one of the most difficult ways you could set up dual PCs because I do not have a Go XLR. First of all, who am I? My name is Kyle, or better known online as the Guitar Leader. I have been making YouTube content for about a decade now. I've been using dual PCs on my Twitch stream for about 5 years. I've helped countless people set up their own streams and help with their OBS issues. I've been using OBS since before it was rewritten and called OBS Multi-Platform, later renamed OBS Studio. I have also contributed to the OBS project. I believe it was the 27.1 update I helped on. I've built OBS from source code. I've modified my own versions of OBS. I'm also a total computer nerd, and I make video games on the side in Unreal Engine. So I kind of have an idea on how games are made, how they affect the system performance, and I kind of know my way around OBS and how OBS affects your system and how playing a game and running OBS at the same time might have some performance differences. Down below in the video description are timestamps as to different parts of the video if you would like to skip ahead and look at some other things, but I highly recommend you watch the video all the way through if this is your first time doing dual PCs, because there is some important knowledge here because you might not need dual PC. But before you skip ahead, I want to ask you the question, why do we actually use dual PC? The majority of people are just going to tell you, well, duh, it's because you get added performance, which is true. You do get extra performance having two, systems dedicated for both gaming and streaming. But I want to emphasize this point. With modern CPUs nowadays, it is becoming increasingly common in the CPU world to keep adding more and more cores to these chips. Intel, for example, their consumer-grade chip, the i7, has, I believe, a 20-core processor now. If you want to upgrade to the Ultra 9, that, I believe, has a 24-core processor. AMD is rolling out a whole new line of X3D chips that have 10 to 12. I think there's even a 14-core chip in there somewhere. Anyway, the point is, cores are becoming more and more common in the CPU world, while games at the same time are still only running on 2 to 4 cores. A lot of older games only run on 2 cores, and a lot of the newer games are still only utilizing 2 cores. Very rarely do you see a game actually optimize all CPU cores. Bear in mind, if you use OBS, OBS itself only has utilization of about 1 to 2 cores itself. Very rarely will OBS actually use more CPU cores. If you have like a heavy load usage, it will divide itself across multiple different CPU cores to better utilize the processor, but the majority of the time it'll only run on 1 core. This is because when you are gaming and you are using multiple CPU cores for gaming, back in the days of when everything was a 4-core processor, it was more effective for OBS to run on 1 core because you could run the majority of the game on the other 3 cores, while OBS had its own 4th core to run on. Nowadays that we have these, 20, 60, even if you have like an 8-core processor, you're still only using 4 cores of the CPU to run the video game. OBS is only running on 1, you have 3 cores left. So again, I asked the question, why do we use dual PC? Well, now you might be thinking it's because of the graphics card. By using the NVINC encoder in OBS, that might add extra GPU strain that might contribute to a loss of FPS in games, which I want to stomp right now. That has absolutely no effect on GPU performance. In my testing, which I want to emphasize, I do not have a good system. I have an 8-core i7 9700K and a 1660 Ti. I am by no means on modern hardware. I can run pretty much any video game at 100 FPS while OBS is encoding in lossless format. If you don't know what lossless format means, that basically just means there is 0 compression. It is exactly what is shown on the screen is being rendered and encoded, and I can play video games and still average 100 FPS doing this. Now, anybody could just explain this to you, but I want to show you. What you're watching on your screen is I have encoded 4 separate videos of the GTA 5 benchmarks. This is the GTA 5 enhanced version that just came out on PC. It was the only game at the time on my computer that I could use to have a consistent benchmark test. I didn't want to rely specifically on a certain aspect of gameplay because depending on different scenes, saving, and how different games can utilize different parts of the CPU, I wanted to make the test as consistent as possible. So I believe this was the best way to go about it. I also want to emphasize the point that all the clips you are watching were recorded on the streaming PC while OBS was running on the game PC. This is not what the game PC was encoding because I want to just show you how the FPS has a different effect on each separate instance. Later, we will review the footage that the game PC itself actually encoded. But our first test was just the control. We had OBS open in the background. It was showing the preview of the game, and we were just running the benchmark test as normal. OBS was not actually running any encoding, it was just running in the background. I wanted to have a solid control to just show how the system handles running a game and running a separate application at the same time, without having that application use any high CPU utilization. The second video we're watching is the same thing, OBS open, except it is encoding in lossless format on the GPU using the NVINC encoder. If you don't know what lossless means, that essentially means that there is zero compression. Exactly what is being shown to the screen, the graphics card is encoding that video and writing it to a file. This is probably the most intensive thing that your graphics card is going to do. Because there is zero compression, it is just writing all the frames and rendering each frame out. Another thing I want to say real quick is you can see that by using the control, the lossless, and the NVINC encoder, my FPS tends to be around the same. Obviously, since OBS isn't doing anything in the control, there's going to be a more noticeable performance hit in both the lossless and the NVINC encoder settings. But you can also see that it's very, very minimal. Now compare that to the X264 encoder, where you can see a noticeable decrease in FPS on more of the nighttime and more like of the action shots of like the plane flying around. This is actually because when using the X264 encoder, the CPU is doing all of the encoding, and it's actually bottlenecking the graphics card at the cost of an FPS loss because the CPU is having to encode each video and also push the frames to the graphics card to be pushed to the screen. I'm now going to take your attention to the screen and I'm going to split it in half, and you're going to watch the lossless video that I encoded on the gaming PC on top of the original footage from the streaming PC. Another very common misconception out there is you do not need to have an absolutely beast of a PC to stream on. For example, my streaming PC is a 4th gen i5 with a 750 Ti graphics card from NVIDIA. It is not at all a good system. I mean, you can't even play like modern video games on it, but it has just enough computing power for what my needs are. At the time of recording this video, Twitch does not allow anybody to stream over 6,000 kilobits per second. There are rumors, I have not actually tried this myself, that Twitch is actually secretly allowing affiliates to stream to 8,000 kilobits per second. Partners, I believe, have the ability to unlock 10,000 kilobits per second. The reason this is important is because true 1080p resolution cannot be rendered in 6,000 kilobits per second. There's not physically enough data there. And I'm going to prove it to you with math. I am showing on your screen right now is a bunch of different height and width resolution ratios along with FPS. The reason why this is important is because we can actually do basic math to figure out what the bit rate will be of a specific thing. The way we get this number is we literally just multiply 1920 times 1080 times 60. That gives you a asininely large number. You divide that number by 1,000, and then you add 160, because 160 is the audio bitrate that OBS is going to automatically merge together with your encoded video when it's being sent to your Twitch stream. The reason this is important is because if you are investing in a 1080p 60 machine to stream on Twitch, Twitch physically does not give you enough bitrate. You can see right here, right underneath our 1080p, you need 8800 kilobits per second for 1080p streaming. Right underneath 6000 is this 1536 by 864 by 60 FPS. That is going to give you a very high quality stream, mind you, for 6,000 kilobits per second. A lot of people I also see push 6,000 kilobits per second on a 720p stream when you only need about 4,000 to do that. So 4,100, you can have a pretty, good quality stream for 4,100 kilobits per second. The reason all of this is important is because you can better manage the utilization on what you have available instead of just buying a new computer for specifically setting up dual PCs. Me, for example, I do not have the best internet on the planet. I struggle to keep about 4,000 kilobits per second. So I have my stream set at 720p 60, which is just, I should probably go up to 4,100, but that gets a little bit of drop frames every once in a while. So I keep it right at the 4,000 kilobits per second mark. And I like to think I have a pretty decent quality stream.
There's so many beeps. Protect Pathy, protect Pathy.
It is just her. Because I am encoding video at such a low kilobits per second on my graphics card, it also allows me to use the extra utilization of the GPU to allow me to encode full 1080p 60 video in pretty much lossless format, because we're using a tiny 5% of the graphics card to render these 4,000 kilobits per second to Twitch. If you yourself are now interested in setting up dual PCs, there's really only one piece of technology you absolutely need, and it's a capture card. Popular brands being Elgato, Evermedia. There's a couple other ones that are listed on Amazon that you could possibly use. I've also seen people use like a cam link or any other sort of HDMI to USB converter for cameras and stuff to use a dual PC. There's a lot of different ways you can have a capture card pick up on an HDMI signal and use that inside of OBS. Now, there's other ways you can do it via networking and stuff like that, but that gets into the more of the complicated side of doing things. The biggest benefit to having an HDMI dedicated signal is, in this instance, we can have the game audio be sent over the HDMI cable, picked up by the capture card, and allow OBS to play said audio for our stream. That actually goes into the second way you can configure dual PCs, which is pretty much the exact opposite. Everything is done on the gaming PC, and we send one mixed signal over the HDMI cable to allow OBS to pick up said capture card and audio. Is very limited with what you can do because everything is mixed on the gaming PC, not on the streaming PC. So you don't have independent sliders for OBS. You can't independently multi-track video. I've seen a lot of people also do this if you have like a Go XLR. They'll have one mixed track in OBS, do everything on the Go XLR, and then that is your mixed audio going into your OBS. And now that takes me to the third configuration, probably the most complicated of the bunch. Having your gaming PC and your streaming PC chained together, acting in unison. What I mean by that, and how I personally have my OBS set up, is I am actually sending 4 separate audio tracks to OBS, one being my mic, one being the game audio, one being Discord audio, and one being music. That is all being picked up in OBS on 4 separate audio tracks, meaning that when I record video, I have one mixed audio track of everything. I have my microphone isolated, I have the game audio isolated, and I have voice chat isolated. And the music and sound effects on my stream are also on a separate audio channel. This allows me to, when I edit videos, I can very quickly mash all the video clips together and just quickly edit, because I don't have to sit there and doing the whole, clap lining up the video and all that stuff. It's very easy to get going, and it isolates every single audio channel, so I can have a lot of customization with how I want to edit my videos. This is also the most complicated way to do this, because you are not using a Go XLR. We have to independently send each audio track over to the other PC using various different networking and stuff like that. And we do this with one program, Voicemeeter Banana. Now, I want to like real quick just say like, they're not really two cons, but more two minor annoyances with running dual PCs that I'm actually going to fix in this video so you don't have to deal with them. One being, because you are running two separate machines, you have to have separate mice and keyboards for them. There are a plethora of applications out there that allow you to network a mouse and keyboard between two separate machines. The reason I don't recommend doing this is in the event you are gaming, there is a big possibility that something will just happen and it'll either get rid of your cursor, your mouse will just not work in the game anymore. If you tend to bump the mouse on the other PC, it can drastically mess up what you're doing in the game. It tends to have a lot more issues. Another way you can solve this is if you have access to a Windows Pro key, you can actually just enable remote desktop. This allows you to just remotely connect to a machine and you can just set up everything that way. By using a remote desktop client, you can share like your Control-C, Control-V clipboard data. You can use one mouse and one keyboard and do everything. It allows you to not actually have another screen. You can just have your computer sitting down there and you can just remote desktop into it and run it that way, which is very useful if you just don't have a lot of monitors. Now, the other minor annoyance with using dual PC is if you are recording on the stream PC, you need to have a way to get those recordings off the PC, and I have tried numerous solutions to solve this. One being recording everything on an external drive. This increases latency on the USB bus, which allow OBS to basically skip frames due to encoding lag because there's not enough physical traffic on the USB bus to allow that much data to be sent over the cable. The other thing I've tried is you can actually buy a hot swap hard drive bay, which means your hard drive essentially acts like a giant USB. So the way this works is you plug the hard drive into the front of the computer, OBS will dump all the video clips on it, and you can just pull the hard drive out, put it in another computer, and just read all the data off of that. This works very well, except for the fact that you have to actually take the hard drive out every time. And if you're in the middle of a big gaming session and you're like, man, I really want to record this, it is very, very annoying to have to safety remove the hard drive and put it back in the streaming PC, because then you have to reboot OBS because the drive is not recognized anymore, which leaves me to the third option. You can essentially just network share a folder. So we're going to create a local user on our Windows machine. We are going to set that user to be able to access that networked folder, and then we're going to broadcast that folder over the network, allowing any machine to just connect to it, provided that you have the right credentials. A lot of people, I think, don't fully utilize this to its potential, because what this also allows you to do is if you have an editor, you can essentially set up a VPN using like Zero Tier, Hamachi, or OpenVPN if you have access to your own server, and you can essentially just have an editor access any video on your streaming PC and just pull clips off of it and use it in a regular old video. One quick thing I want to note is if you are going to go the network storage route on the streaming PC, I highly recommend, if you have the ability to invest in a 10 gig network card, a 10 gig switch, and some Cat6 cables. This allows you to substantially increase the rendering and just the time scrubbing the timeline in most applications. I've noticed, especially in Premiere Pro, the performance dramatically decreases when you start using network storage if you are still on your 1 gigabit per second router connection, which is what is pretty standard nowadays. So I'm editing this video and I've realized that I didn't really explain that unless you are editing like 4K 60 FPS or 1080p, anything over 60 FPS footage, you are going to need a 10 gig card, because you are going to notice a massive performance hit when you are scrubbing the timeline in different applications. If you're just sticking to like general gameplay clips or just 1080p 60 video, 1 gigabit per second is pretty much fine, unless you're doing anything over the like CQP rate of like 20 or 22, somewhere in that range. You should be just fine using 1 gig a second networking. If you're doing lossless footage, you might want to invest in a 10 gig card, but for just generic like live streaming content, I really don't see a need for it. I also understand that that's quite an investment to get 2 network cards and a network switch if you already have a system that works, which you could just do what I do. I just copy and paste the video over, go to the bathroom or something while it does that. It doesn't take that long. Since I already have everything set up on my streaming PC, I have opened up a virtual machine here to show you how to configure the networking side of things for your computer. First thing we're going to do is we're going to set a static IP address on both the gaming machine and the streaming PC. This concept applies to both machines, and essentially what we're doing here is we are telling the router that this is the IP address of the computer. This is very important later when we set up like mapping network drives, if you enable remote desktoping, and all the virtual configuration that we're going to do with networking audio devices. So the way you do that is I first want you to go and type CMD. This opens up a command prompt. First thing you're going to do is you're going to type ipconfig. Okay. What this shows you, your default gateway is the overall gateway of the router. This is the current IP address of this machine. Okay. And then this is your subnet mask. Now, this is a little bit out of my wheelhouse here. I'm not a big, networking major, but what we're going to do is we're going to set a static IP address. So this is going to change. This is an important number to remember because this is how you access your router. Now, what I want you to do is I want you to go into your router settings, open up your Edge browser. Oh, it's going to make me do all this. All right, what I want you to do first is I want you to actually go to that IP address. Now, in my case, it's not actually going to do anything because this is a virtual machine. It's all virtualized. In your case, it is actually going to take you to your router homepage. Inside of your router homepage, now this is very different for each brand of router. There is going to be a section that is called your DHCP range. What that essentially means is that is when a device connects to your network, it is going to automatically find an IP address that isn't taken and provide that. The reason you want to set your DHCP range, by default, it should be about the 100 to 200 range. But in case it's not, you want to set it, you want to leave yourself a little bit of room outside of the DHCP range to set a static IP address. This essentially makes sure that when you set the address of the machine inside of the router, you are outside of that range, meaning that there will never be two systems that are trying to collide for the same IP address. So you might be asking yourself, how do we actually set a static IP address? Well, it's pretty straightforward. We just go to network. You can go to the control panel. You can go to your network and internet. You can go to network and sharing center. And you can type right here, Ethernet O. Or you can go to, if you're in this page, you can go to view network status. This will give you to the change adapter settings. So what we're going to do here is we're going to right click. We're going to go to properties. We're going to uncheck the IPv6 box down here. And we're going to go to the IPv4 and we're going to click properties. The first thing you want to do is you want to use a following IP address. Now this is the IP address that is outside of the DHCP range that you can use to assign a static IP address to this computer. In my case, that is 192.168.100.100. The subnet mask should automatically fill in, and then your default gateway is this default gateway, 192.168.100.2. So I'm going to fill that out real quick. I lost the page. And then for your preferred DNS server, you can use 8.8.8. 8 for Google. The alternative DNS server, you can use Google's alternative DNS server, which is 8844, or you can also use 1111, I believe is Cloudflare's, but I recommend you just do 888.8844. Check the validate settings upon exit, and then press OK, and then close. This will open up the troubleshooter. You're going to see your computer briefly disconnect from internet, and then it should connect back up. Yep, see, I've connected back up to internet. As you can see, troubleshooter could not identify a problem because there is not a problem. The other thing you can do here is if you want to make sure that your computer actually is still connected to the internet, just real quick, do a ping www.google.com, and you can see we are replying. We're getting a reply from the Google address, which means that our system is currently set up to network, and we are all working just fine. You have successfully set a static IP address. Now, make sure you do this step on both the streaming PC and the gaming PC, but make sure you do not use the same IP address. In my case, I set my gaming PC to the .98 address, and my streaming PC is the .99 address. Another thing we're going to do is we're going to add a local user to this machine. This allows us to broadcast a video drive to anybody that has these credentials to log into the system. This is a little bit more secure than just using a Microsoft account because you don't have to give someone your Microsoft account information. It also is a little bit easier to sign in because you can just use a local password that, you know, only you know. And the way we do that is we go to the settings. We're going to go down to accounts. We're going to go into sign-in options. Nope, we're not. We're going to go to family and other users. We're going to hit add someone else to this PC. You're going to get this add Microsoft account pop up, and you're going to click I don't have this person's sign-in information. It's then going to prompt you again, and you're going to hit add a user without a Microsoft account. This is going to be, it's going to ask you for a username, make a password, and it's also going to give you some security questions. Just fill that out real quick. Now that we have a local user on the machine, we're going to open up the File Explorer. We're going to click on our videos, right-click, hit Properties. We're going to go to the Sharing tab here, and we are going to click on this big old Share button right there. And what this is going to allow you to do is it's going to allow you to add another user to this machine. For the sake of example, I'm just going to add everybody. And then you're going to have a little drop down here. You can provide just read access if you only want to pull videos off the video drive, or you can do read write, which you can use to share content back and forth between your gaming machine and your streaming PC. This is very useful if you want to quickly share new OBS assets without having to put them on a flash drive or do a whole bunch of cloud stuff. It's pretty straightforward. And then you just click share. It'll take a little bit. It is going to ask you to turn on network discovery if you haven't already done that. And then boom, this address down here is your shared videos. And then if you want to connect to that network drive, all you have to do is click on this PC, go to map network drive, select the drive letter. Sometimes it lets you just browse for a folder. In my case, it's not going to let me. And that address that I highlighted before is what you're going to use to connect, which is usually just 2 backslashes followed by the PC name, followed by another slash, which is the path to the shared folder, which in this case would be users. And then you want to check this box down here, sign in or connect using different credentials, and check the reconnect on sign in. This will open up a pop-up allowing you to type in your password and your username that you have just created. And congratulations, you have successfully mapped a network drive, and you can share videos back and forth between your gaming and streaming PCs. Real quick before I put the video out, I just want to say that in some versions of Windows 11, Microsoft actually has turned on what's known as SMB signing, which basically just means that it's additional security when you want to map a network drive. If you cannot, for the life, get it to work on a Windows 11 machine, I highly recommend you do this. So just go to PowerShell. You can press Control-Shift at the same time and click on Windows PowerShell. This will give you this prompt to open an administrative PowerShell. Okay? What I'm going to do here is I'm going to copy a command that you can find down in the video description, which is basically going to check if you have security signing enabled. In my case, I have it disabled because my drive is already mapped. So if you want to disable it, you can go in. I'm going to have another command that you can copy down in the video description, and you just want to do set SMB client configuration requires security signage false. And then this will give you this pop-up. You're just going to press A for everything, and then you're just going to press that. This will disable the SMB signing and allow you to map your network drive successfully. I don't recommend you do this if you have a public mapped address because, again, this is an added layer of security. But if you went through the effort of creating a local user with a username and password, I don't really see a problem with disabling this extra layer of security. The next thing we want to do is we actually want to set up our capture card. So you're going to just right click anywhere on the desktop. You're going to go and hit show more properties and hit NVIDIA control panel. So real quick, I want to demonstrate to you that you can still game at an insane amount of FPS and still have your graphics card render a separate video out to the capture card for your stream to actually pick up on. So the way you do that is you can see down here I have 144 Hertz on my G-Sync compatibles display, and on my Elgato you can see it's grayed out here. Okay, the way we get that set up is you actually want to go down here and you want to right click and you want to hit clone your main monitor, which is the actual monitor. You want to clone that with whatever is your Elgato. So that will, in my case, that's monitor number 2. I want to clone 1 with monitor number 2. Okay, you then want to go over here and go to adjust desktop size and position, and you want to click on your main monitor. You want to set no scaling. You want to do the scaling on the GPU, and you want to set the resolution to whatever resolution you normally play at and whatever refresh rate you want your monitor to be at. In my case, this is just the highest my monitor supports. You want to do the same thing on the Elgato. Again, no scaling. You want to do GPU scaling, or you want to perform scaling on the GPU, my bad. You also want to set the resolution to 1080p at 60 Hertz, because in my case, that's all my capture card allows me to set up. Now, this also allows you to use G-Sync. You can enable G-Sync and set it for full screen mode, and what that allows me to do is on G-Sync compatible devices, I have my full NVIDIA running to this monitor on top of having a separate signal being sent to another PC. So if you are like a very competitive person and you like to maximize your FPS and have all the G-Syncs and the reflexes and all that, this is a totally fine setup for you to do because it allows you to use all that technology that's there. Another thing I recommend you do real quick is if you actually go to manage 3D settings, again, it might take a little bit to load. I highly recommend you go down to the bottom, and for vertical sync, you set it to fast. In like super basic terms, what this means is when the graphics card is sending two video signals across two separate ports on the back of the graphics card, it'll make sure that they are somewhat synchronized together. What I've noticed is if you don't set this on NVIDIA itself and you use the in-game vertical sync, sometimes that's very finicky and you'll get super bad chopping and aliasing all over your stream, and it looks so bad. By setting vertical sync here, we're basically saying that we're going to use it all the time, and we're going to use it on the fastest setting possible. I have experimented around with putting it on, but I've noticed that some games don't really allow that setting, so I've set it to fast, and I've never had an issue since. Once you successfully change that setting, you can go down here, and you can go and hit the apply button, and it'll change your settings. If you want my settings personally for my NVIDIA, mine are tuned a little bit more towards the maximizing the most out of my graphics card. Here are all the settings. If you wish to look at them, you can pause the video at any time. And that wraps up the video portion of the video. So what I want you to do is go down into the video description. There will be a link that'll make you download the Voicemeeter Pro setup, also known as Voicemeeter Banana. I want you to right click on this file and hit run as administrator. I'm not actually going to do that because I already have it installed and set up and I don't want to change that. But once you do that, this will open up this program. Now, without like overly explaining everything, I just want to quickly say that these top 3 audios, these are your audio outputs. So the first one, I want you to set to whatever your main output device is. In my case, that's this pair of headphones. If you play on speakers, you can do that. If you have a wireless headset, it picks up on pretty much any sound card you have available. And the second option, I want you to set this to your Elgato or whatever NVIDIA high definition audio device is available for that. Essentially, that is just the HDMI port out the back of the system. Okay, you want to turn everything off except only this Voicemeeter aux. You want that turned on for your capture card. What that essentially means is this is going to isolate every single piece of audio and only send the game audio, which is also known as the desktop audio. You can set that down here in the settings by setting the Voicemeeter aux input to the VB audio Voicemeeter aux VAIO. Set that to your default device, set this to port number 2, and that will output any desktop audio to the capture card on the streaming PC. I personally turn off my listening to my own sound. I can turn this on and listen to it if I want, but I don't like listening to the sound of my own voice, so there's that. You also want to check B1 for your microphone, and you want to check B2 for your voice chat. I'll explain later why you want to do that. But now if you go into VBAN, by default, this is going to be off. So what I want you to do is I want you to turn on VBAN, and I want you to turn on incoming streams. This is going to be the IP address of your streaming PC. In the outgoing streams, you want to route the bus, which is bus number 1, this bus right here, to output to that IP address. And bus number 2 is going to be that. Now, I have taken the time to label these as microphone, meaning anything on bus number 1 is going to go through my mic channel. Anything on bus number 2 is going to be voice chat, which I have done in Discord. As you can see right here, my Voicemeeter input is my VB audio Voicemeeter VAIO. Do not set that to the aux VAIO because then you will merge the voice chat with the desktop. We want to separate these and isolate these channels. So we're just going to use the basic VAIO, not the aux VAIO. After you have the bus 1 and bus 2 checked to the appropriate channels, and you have checked the on buttons here, given them a proper name, and set the IP address off, by default this is going to be set to optimal. I highly recommend you set this to fast, because this will just push the signal out as soon as it possibly can, minimizing the latency on the system. This will prevent like sudden delays if all of a sudden you're streaming, all of a sudden like an explosion goes off and you either see the explosion go off before the audio or the audio happens before. This will prevent as little delay as possible. And then what I personally like to do on the incoming stream, I like to set the desktop audio on the stream PC to come through and set that to destination number 3. That is reserved for this track right here, which I have set to be on this A1 bus, which is going to my headphones. Hopefully I'm explaining this in a way where it makes sense, where if you run into issues, it is pretty easy and straightforward for you to fix it yourself instead of doing a whole bunch of spending hours Googling, trying to figure out why it doesn't work. And on the streaming PC, you want to do the exact opposite. You want to set your incoming stream to be your microphone and your voice chat with the IP address of the other computer. Again, we're setting this to fast, and when I want to put this in destination 1, or in channel 1, excuse me, and in channel number 2, I want to set the voice chat. I then want to set the desktop audio to be the A1 bus, which is just whatever audio device is available. For me, I have this hooked up to a TV, so it's just the integrated NVIDIA high-definition audio driver for my television. And essentially what you want to do is you want to output this to bus 1, and you want to output 1 to bus 2. This allows you in OBS to click on these little 3 dots right here, go to Properties. Now, this might take some experimentation, but one of these will be Voicemeeter output, Voicemeeter VAIO. The other one will be aux VAIO. In my case, my microphone is outputting to the VAIO channel, and in my voice chat, I have Properties. This is my aux VAIO channel. This allows me to have 2 separate sliders to independently control both my Discord audio and my microphone in OBS. I also have these set up to record in 3 separate tracks, so when I go to edit, I have isolated vocals across all 3 of these audio tracks, allowing me to independently control and either raise volume, lower volume for people in the voice chat. I can use compressors and equalize volume that way. There's a lot of different opportunities and a lot of different ways you can go about actually setting up audio to work like this. And that, ladies and gentlemen, wraps up the video. We have successfully set up dual PCs. Everything's good to go. You just have to set up your OBS the way you want to. For the sake of this video, I am not going to actually show you the specifics of how to set up like multiple different assets and everything. There are literally hundreds of videos out there on the internet of people that are smarter than I am that have figured out how to do that and how to configure your own overlays and do all that stuff and everything. If you want in the future, I would be happy to make a video about how I personally have my OBS set up and the current settings I use to record and everything. If you like that idea, make sure you give it a like rating down below, and of course subscribe if you want to know when future videos are out. If you had any issues, don't be afraid to leave a comment down below. I will happily answer anybody's questions on how to set up dual PCs. If you find that your problem is a little bit more intense than the YouTube comments, we do have a Discord server linked down below. I will be in the general tech help channel helping anybody with dual PC setups.